Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This video will describe the effects of the leukocyte that are generated to the inflammatory milieu or inflammatory environment, and as a result the tissue is injured. The references for this video are these. The learning objectives for this video are to define the leukocyte-mediated tissue injury and explain how it occurs during acute inflammation, to explain the process of frustrated phagocytosis and how it contributes to collateral tissue damage, and to describe how excessive leukocyte activation contributes to acute inflammatory disease. There are many circumstances in which this leukocyte-mediated tissue injury occurs. It is basically the collateral damage of the adjacent tissue that occur especially in prolonged inflammatory processes such as TB or in certain viral infections. Sometimes the inflammatory response is misdirected toward host tissue, and as occurs in some autoimmune diseases. Then the excessive host tissue response against usually harmless environmental substance, as happens in allergic disease and asthma, can also lead to the leukocyte mediated tissue injury. Then what are various mechanisms in the leukocyte mediated tissue injury that result in tissue damage? As we know that there is release of microbicidal substances in the normal inflammatory process, and in this inflammatory process the release substance, they do not discriminate between the normal host cell and pathogen. If these substances are released into the extracellular environment, they will lead to collateral damage of the acute inflammation. If there is damage to the vascular endothelium, this will worsen the situation. Key effector cells that induce the damage of the tissue in the acute inflammation are same, that are the phagocytic cells of acute inflammation. These are neutrophils and macrophages. So uh, there is granule release mechanism. These have got specific proteinases and other enzymes and various substances that basically induce the damage to the microbe, and when they do not discriminate the difference between the microbe and the normal host tissue, uh, if they are not controlled, they are going to induce the damage. So there should be a controlled mechanism of the granule secretion. Frustrated phagocytosis is a term that is applied when immune complexes are deposited on immovable surfaces like glomerular basement membrane, and the leukocyte then release their granules extracellularly to combat the damage, but they actually induce more damage to the environment. Uh, in some condition, there is phagolysosomal membrane damage. Such situation occur in urate crystal deposition, when these urate crystals, they are large and they cause rupture of the lysosomal membrane. As a result, there is leakage and the release of harmful enzymes to outside. So many inflammatory diseases are driven by leukocyte mediated tissue damage such as glomerulonephritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and gout. These, uh, these induce various degree of injury to the surrounding tissue. This flow diagram is showing the mechanism of cell and tissue damage. The cell drive mediator are associated or affiliated with activation and release of various products from neutrophil as well as macrophages. They are also responsible for various biochemical changes on the endothelial cells. So there is release of tumor necrotic factor and interleukin 1 that are the major cytokines. There is also production of nitric oxide and endothelin along with prostaglandin. So some of the microbial products and some of the plasma drive mediators, they are responsible for the upregulation of the adhesion molecules on all of these structures. Then there is recruitment of more polymorphonuclear neutrophil recruitment. Also, there is activation of the neutrophils. So due to this activation, there is release of proteases and oxygen radicals that induce oxygen uh, oxidative stress to the cell. So cumulatively, all these effects, they will lead to connective tissue damage and disordered repair, endothelial cell injury, and epithelial cell injury. So whole of this environment is now facing the injurious changes because the material, the degradative material that is produced during the inflammation is not discriminating between the host cell and the invading cell. This leukocyte mediated cell injury is involving or is associated with many of the diseases. It's many of the acute and chronic inflammatory disease. Acute one, neutrophil is associated with in or is implicated in acute respiratory distress syndrome. Eosinophils and IgE antibodies are the major cause of the damage in asthma. Antibodies complement neutrophil and monocytes are one of the causes of injury in glomerulonephritis, while in septic shock, the cytokines are the major change of major culprit. And then in chronic conditions, lymphocyte, macrophages, and antibodies are implicated in arthritis. Eosinophil and IgE antibodies are implicated in asthma. Macrophages, lymphocytes, and these macrophages and lymphocytes are associated with changes or damage that occurs in atherosclerosis, while macrophages and fibroblasts are the major culprit that are associated with the condition pulmonary fibrosis, and they are responsible for most of the damage that occur in these conditions. Besides getting rid of the offending agent, the activated leukocyte also secretes cytokines that can either amplify or limit the inflammatory reaction. They are also secreting growth factors that stimulate the proliferation of endothelial cell and fibroblasts that are responsible for synthesis of the collagen, and they also secrete enzymes that remodel connective tissue. There is involvement of Th17 lymphocyte response in acute inflammation also. So cytokines, major cytokines production, the key player are macrophage and T lymphocytes, Th17, and they regulate inflammation, amplify or limit the response, and interleukin 17 recruits additional leukocytes. Then macrophage are the major cells that are responsible for initiation of tissue repair and remodeling. They stimulate the production of the fibroblast. They induce collagen synthesis that start the process of healing. And they also secrete enzymes that remodel connective tissue. Macrophages are also implicated in chronic inflammation to maintain prolonged immune responses, and they also release growth factors that support fibrosis. The lymphocyte role in adaptive immunity is a major one, but they are also uh, a member, a cytokine, interleukin family cytokine that is responsible for recruitment of more neutrophil to the inflammatory environment. If there is deficiency of this response, that will result in formation of cold abscesses. That means that infection is there without classic inflammatory signs. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any question, please write in the comment box.